All right, we can go ahead and call the City Council Budget Work Session meeting to order. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Doing roll call, we have all members present. Do we have any public comment this evening? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt. Second.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda from Councilman Heeman and a second from Councilman Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. I don't know why, every once in a while I hesitate with the names. They're just jumbled around in my head, and it's like,
It's mostly me and Steve, too.
that is, it's because it's Luke and Lundin, and I don't know why I have trouble with that. It's just silly, but I got it right, though. All right, Mike, we're moving on to work session item F1, budget discussion.
So, yeah, so this is third budget work session. This one I don't have canned set materials, and I have everything with, but this is really a council-led discussion at this point. I don't know if Jaden can put this up on the screen. What I'll have her put up is just, this is that levy tax rate analysis workbook, right? That's got data going back to 2002. Just to give you guys an understanding of currently where we're at with projected levy and projected tax rate. Just to kind of give you that broader perspective. Yeah, I guess until that comes up.
LGA money, did that stay the same this year as it did last year then, or did we lose some of that, go back?
It went up.
Did it go up a little
It
bit?
went up a small amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't
Actually,
see it going back to what it was years previous at this point, huh? I mean,
I think that during the Great Recession, when we had the clawback on LGA, I think there were enough people around the state that suddenly remembered why LGA is there at all in the first place. And you know, in the end, LGA is there just because LGA is basically there to help out cities that end up being a regional center of some type, where I can only tax Isani residents, but I need to provide services for another 8,000 people that show up. Not super workable, and if that's difficult to identify in this area, you go to Southwest Minnesota or Northeast Minnesota. It's super obvious. I mean, if you're Marshall, Minnesota, or even Granite Falls, or you're Grand Marais on the North Shore, yeah, you need to have LGA, or nobody would be able to afford to live in your city. So I don't really see that backtracking in a significant way. Yeah, so as it is right now, a roughly 6.5% increase in the levy, and that equates to about, roughly 2.5% tax rate increase. One other thing,
I would like to add to the LGA fund thing. The LMC does fight for smaller cities and that type of money too, so I don't see it going anywhere either. It was a pretty heavy focus today, actually.
yeah, and just this is that preview slide. I always end with this. I wish this was a little taller. I always end with this at the December presentation, right? We talk about we're going to manage our finances better than everybody else, right? That there's a durable competitive advantage to being had in managing your capital maintenance, and capital projects at a high level, and that should yield results. And this is one of those ways that we track those results. When I look at this, right, we've gone down 47% over that time span. Next best is East Bethel at 33. That is we're basically doing 50% better than second place. The economist and finance guy in me looks at that and says, just remember there is a limit.
But we were pretty high originally too, so it's easier to start from a high point and go to a low point, just like, yeah.
Yep, there is some of that, right? But yeah, there is a limit. I hope we don't have an expectation of there's 10 to 15% decreases in the tax rate every year. That's not
What do you mean? Do
mathematically.
we have to actually pay for some things?
Mathematically, that won't work. So, yeah, we do actually have to pay for some things, or as I think everybody's been here long enough to hear me say, is that if you really want, you know, for example, capital, if you really want the capital levy to go down, you actually do have to remove something, like something actually has to go. You know, if you want PD budget to go down, well, most of that's personnel, so you actually have to get rid of an officer and then say, Travis, this is the thing you're doing that we no longer need. So those are, and if,
Then on
and
that
if they're,
double-edged sword, when they're talking about our permits and we're as busy as we are, that's going up, and if you start cutting officers, that's really gonna short us. I think. But I don't, the police budget, as much as, I don't wanna disagree with you that it's very high, but I think that's one thing that we have to stay away from. I honestly, I don't wanna see any of that. I mean, he did a great job with that public safety funds to offset some of those costs for us. I think Travis is doing an awesome job, and being fiscally responsible for that.
My only complaint is the squad cars. Cut an officer, I don't think that's gonna happen. That's-
in the squad cars has been a disappointing thing, because it was not in, one, the offering, what is offered for pursuit-rated vehicles has dwindled dramatically
Yeah,
in the
it's
last 10 years.
Garbage.
And 10 years ago, I could get a Ford Taurus, pursuit-rated Ford Taurus, and not equipped, but just ready to be equipped. I paid 23 grand 10 years ago for that. Now you can't even get that. It's not a vehicle that's even offered anymore.
What do,
Yeah.
does
it
anybody
is-
know what European police use for cars? I mean, do they have the same standards as we have? Because,
Our cars are a lot different.
well, that-
Well, even if we could get it, just getting it shipped here would kill us. I mean, I'd end up spending 7 to 10 grand just to have it shipped. So.
all right, unless there's some sort of, you know, if you have a Toyota dealer and they can get a Toyota Pursuit vehicle from there that's, you know, and it's all made in Japan anyway, you know, so they're shipped anyway. I mean,
Not
I don't
that-
know if
not-
that's anything we've ever considered, because these domestic cars aren't lasting worth a hoot for us.
Well,
There's gotta
Yeah,
be a
and-
creative solution, is what I'm saying.
well,
That's still safe.
I mean, in the past, it had always just worked because as an automobile manufacturer, you wanted your vehicles to be used as police vehicles. That was seen as like a badge of honor, right? Like literally, like socially as a member of society, but also like, hey, this vehicle is tough enough to handle what police are doing. And
Yeah, when I was a kid,
It's
it was the Crown
Crown
Vics,
Vic,
right?
baby.
everybody knew a
Let's
Crown
just buy
Vic
some of
because
those.
And there was
that,
the
you know,
Plymouths before
but-
that. and-
He's not even against it.
But you,
What'd you say?
He's not even against buying Crown
You wanna
Vics.
go back to the?
you know, but for whatever reason,
Noted.
auto manufacturers don't seem to see it quite the same way as they once did. And so the offerings that they put out are fewer and, you know, a smaller number of vehicles, like lines of vehicles, like the Taurus is just no longer there. But then what they are producing is a smaller number in total quantity besides, and it's not helpful, but I think they probably just are done saying, all right, here, we'll give you vehicles at cost, is I think probably what the analysis ended up being there, but.
I know we had a conversation about going from 5 years to 6 years on squads, and I don't remember what the outcome of that was, but we stuck at 5. Could we maybe just run a couple test cars, like have 2 of the fleet go 6 years and just see what the number difference is? Kind of give future consuls an option,
I think
maybe
that's
to.
kind of what we've had to do.
And
because
we
couldn't
are
get-
running, so just because there's this vehicle coming on, there
Okay.
isn't a vehicle coming off, right? So
Right.
it's challenging to get, so we're gonna have to get a 5-year time frame that when we're fully staffed and when we're operational, right? So we're getting close, to see what we're gonna do. I would say we're in 2025, by the end of 2025, on our fleet plan that we looked at, we should be able to reevaluate that, because then we'd have the full staff, which is their full mileage type thing, to see what those cars are. Because we do have the cars that are running up and, trying to think what the oldest car would be. 2019, whatever. But so we do have, just because, it says it's replacing a car, it's not replacing the car, we're still operating those vehicles. So we'll have a pretty good handle, my guess, at the end of 2025 to see what we came up with that fleet plan, which is, the 3-year life cycle as a primary patrol vehicle, then the rest of its life cycle is a secondary patrol vehicle plus the administrative vehicles. We'll see how that actually plays out. Now, part of that, how to figure that's gonna be challenging, because we have a vehicle that was on the 2023 capital plan that was ordered in September of 2022 that will finally be hitting the road next
2030.
week,
Yep.
right? So you're talking September 2022, we ordered a vehicle that was in a 23 plan that will finally hit the road now. So think about what life cycle, how does that work with trying to figure out those life cycle? It's a challenge because it's not very consistent. You know, even with our plan that we had, because we didn't get the replacement when we thought we'd get the replacement.
Sure.
So it's a little,
Do we have any money for pens?
There's.
It was a free one.
Could we increase that budget for?
No,
that was a free one, so.
Travis brings that from home.
Okay.
I also didn't realize that each officer had their own squad car, basically. I didn't realize that was the sort of, kind of, typically in the same squad car. That's what one of the officers told me, and I didn't realize that. I was thinking, basically, one car would always be day, one car would always be night type of thing. I didn't know that they,
So it depends on the mileage, what they're at the vehicle. So some of the vehicles are in 24 hours a day, so we don't have any vehicles that are in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. None of them are, because that actually
burns
just
up.
destroys it. It's ridiculous. So depending on, some vehicles are gonna be running 12 hours a day, every day. And then some of the other vehicles on occasion will run 24 hours a few days, depending on how the rotation. So we look at the mileage for that month period, those officers and what they traditionally drive. So when we have that plan of our primary patrol vehicles, when that one cycles out into the secondary patrol vehicle, we want to have that mileage should be consistent rather than, you know, and having spread the mileage out over the fleet over the years. So every year it's supposed to have X amount of miles, so that by the time you reach 5, 6 years, you should have the right amount of miles. So you don't have one that's really high and one's really low. So some vehicles might only be driven 12 hours a day, every other day. And then some are driven 12 hours a day every day, and then there's a couple on occasions where they'll double up on, you know, 2 12-hour shifts within a day.
Okay.
Council maybe doesn't see it or, you know, wouldn't necessarily know, but John and Travis do put quite a bit of effort forth, trying to keep those vehicles kind of in their lane, right? Because you can't just buy the new vehicle and then just run that thing 24/7 and then know you have to wait 5 years on that one while these other, you know, you have to balance that out, and they put forth a good deal of effort making sure that they're actually using them in a fashion that will get them to last the 5 years. To your notion on 6, one thing I've always done in my mind on these things is to my mind, there are certain items on a capital plan that most commonly, not exclusively, but most commonly deal with fire and police, and that is there's certain equipment in those categories that simply has to work. Like, it just is not an option to not. It's not an option for long guns to not work. It's not an option for handguns to not work. It's not an option for tasers to not work. And it's also, in my opinion, not an option for a squad vehicle to not start. Now, I will make a recommendation about useful life that I think gets us there. If council wants to change that to 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, that's fine. But I'm going to continue to recommend 5, because I think that in my years of practice, that's a workable number where I have a high degree of confidence that no officer is going to be called to a God knows what kind of scene and not have a vehicle working. So,
They also did talk about, today at LMC, there is going to be a possible decrease in, disability payments to PD or an increase in our premiums. So that is, I'm sure you're probably aware of that, but that is something that was discussed today. So I don't know when
Let's,
that's gonna take place. They just said it
yeah.
has to happen.
yeah, I don't want to say too much. Let's say this is that we've done well enough on workers' comp that an increase would probably still be dramatically better than where we were. How about that?
Okay.
We've done well. Travis has done well enough on taking care of the things that we need to take care of on the front end and annually ongoing with staff to be able to mitigate those risks. And our worker comp premiums are tied to the police department have dropped a lot in the last 4 years, and it is because of what Travis is doing.
Okay,
So,
good. Minneapolis has seen the opposite by a lot.
Oh, I bet they are.
And-
Oh, yes, they are.
And I did get, there was a chart I gave you at some point in council that had like the last 6-year premiums over 6-year time frame.
Yep.
So it wasn't there. And to the point where I think the highest was around $12,000 or $13,000 per officer per year, times 10. That was the highest.
Yeah, that'd be the other thing is to remind the council, I brought this up before, is, you know, I don't know what insurance renewals are going to be, right? I've got an estimate in there and I'm reasonably confident in my estimate, but when we come around to September 3rd, September 3rd, we still are not going to know that information. Boy, I would love to. But if we have any doubts about where we're at or that we are too close to the margin, we really should add either, 5% or 100,000 or whatever to the levy with the recognition that we intend to go back down. But remember, is once you set it in September, if you find out, oh shoot, that was too low, it's already too bad. So,
What happened last year when we waited until the last meeting in September instead of the first meeting in September to pass that preliminary budget, or is that right?
I don't
'Cause then we
remember if we
did have
did.
the insurance numbers in time.
We did.
yeah, we can do that. So the reason that pretty much every city does first meeting in September, first meeting in December, it is so that you have a second meeting in that month to fix, like let's say September 3rd, big car accident, and you get called out, and you're gone, and I don't even have a quorum. All right, well, now I still have one more meeting to try to get a quorum to try to get something passed. So if we do want to, talk about the budget again on the 3rd, and we say, you know what, this isn't going to work, but then if we don't take any action and we wait for that second meeting in September, everybody's got to, we got to have a quorum. There's not a lot. After that, the only other option is mayor to call a special meeting, in the waning dates. And then there is a deadline in September and December for me to report that information to the county and or state.
What happens if you don't?
From my recollection is if you don't do, like if I didn't report my preliminary levy, I didn't report it, you would be automatically re-up for last year's levy.
Okay,
And if that leaves you short,
got it.
too bad, so sad.
So, Mayor and Council, just to chime in a little bit, we did wait and called a special meeting last year. It was September 26th that we approved the preliminary budget, 25th was a Monday. We called a special meeting to get it in the week to make sure it went to the county in time.
Why was that, though? Was it because we were waiting for the insurance numbers, or was there some other reason that we had to do it that way, or?
I think there were just, my recollection was that there were just continued discussions
Okay.
and fine
Yeah,
tuning.
I can't remember the details of that, but I mean, we considered an awful lot of options and scenarios. I mean, it was a lot.
I think
So it
if
might
we
have just
look
been
at
that.
What he's got proposed already with a 6.5% increase to the levy, overall 2.5% tax increase, if we set, we can go down from that, we just can't go up from that. And, setting this preliminary levy isn't gonna hurt us, we just can't go over that amount. And I think that's protecting ourselves all the way across the board. Then we can start really focusing on what we can do to maybe, like he said, that $100,000 or that 5%, where can we joggle things around, make some other adjustments to make that happen. By what he's proposed right now, I think that is a safe bet. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna end it as, but we can't go over that. We can definitely go under it, we just can't go over it. And I think setting that initial levy is a smart choice, and then us being fiscal to drop it from there. We just know we can't go over that.
Yeah.
How much money per percent are we looking at? Like if you went from 2.5% down to 1.5% per se?
Oh. So you're wondering on the change in levy or change in the tax rate?
Levy.
Well, I think you're saying if we wanted to get, let's say we wanted to get to a 0% levy,
Right.
or not levy, but
How much
the
would we have to
tax
cut?
rate.
Tax rate, what
How
are we
much-
talking?
What kind of dollars do we need to save to get to zero, is what you're asking?
Yes.
That 2.5% to get to
To
zero.
get that 2.5% to zero?
How much do we have to cut out of the budget?
Roughly from that levy, roughly $100,000 less.
Is that just 1% or is that the 2.5 to 0?
That, rough math, that gets you to, from 2.6 down to 0, rough math.
What was that dollar amount? Roughly 100.
I mean, that's where I'd like to be on a
Right.
preliminary even, would be
Right.
to get to that. I mean, Mike, I mean, if you, and I don't know if, I really haven't had a lot of time to discuss, and I know I said I would by this meeting, and I still
I w-
haven't, so.
I would say this, I certainly understand the intent. You know, council members always are gonna have a little different look at this than I, right? Council member inherently has an incentive to have a shorter view of this. I'm always thinking of this as, how do I get Isani residents to pay the smallest amount of tax in aggregate over 40 years? But that's not the incentive structure that any council member has, that's not how that works. You know, I would say is that when we're looking at, you know, market value is only going up 3.5% compared to what we had been seeing with, you know, the prior years of, you know, 13, 27, 12, 12, 14, 13, 14.
Wow.
You think 3.5 is where we're gonna be this time?
It's gonna, well, right now,
I'm
we're sitting at about
surprised it's even still
3.45.
positive.
What's going on there is that we've got a bunch of existing homes that have actually dropped in value, because remember, they actually have to use market data, and they have to hit 90 to 105% of actual, so they actually have to look at actual sales. And if sale prices actually start going down, your values have to go down, that by statute. But we have added some commercial, and we've added some new homes. So we get a little bit of an offset, but, I mean, there are gonna be other communities that, you know, this year are gonna be seeing, you know, an 8%, 6 or 8% drop in market value. So we're fairly fortunate, given the amount of development we've had, we're fairly fortunate that we're only talking about an increase at all, first of all, and that we're actually getting to 3.5. But this is one of those times where, you know, the last 2 years, especially when I say 27 and 13, in my view, this is those three levers. I would have been putting more in fund balance, right? Because this is where we could have evened that out. I probably know the budget better than anybody, at least that's supposed to be how that works, right? I don't know where 100,000 comes from, unless I get a really, really knockout insurance renewals, and I don't mean
Well,
one.
I have an
I mean, all of the insurance renewals would have to be knockouts.
Well, I have an idea that I think we need to have a serious discussion about our park amenities and what we think is good enough, because if you look at the average household, if they have a running and driving car, they're not gonna just replace it just to replace it. They're gonna be fiscally responsible. Even if it's got a few nicks and bruises on it, they still use it because that's what the household does. So I think we need to look at how we spend on the parks, especially the tennis court repaving. I asked somebody that has played tennis for the last 7 or 8 years, and they said Matson and Academy Park are two of the nicest ones they played on in the last 7 or 8 years. And those are both scheduled to be redone, and that's not happening. I mean, sure, we're only kicking that down a little bit, and that's not gonna make much difference, but I think overall as an aggregate, we need to have a serious discussion about that, because households we're not Edina, we're Isani. People expect a little bit less than I think what our staff or our Parks Board might want, but the staff or the Parks Board might not have to, or might not have the fiscal response, or the fiscal mind that we might have, because we listen to it all day from people, Why are you replacing that tennis court? It's perfectly fine. So I think we should have that, because that could save us a lot of money on, I think our parks are too nice, to be honest. They're too nice for.
Yeah, so adjusting useful lives, I mean, that's one of the things where when you have a comprehensive plan, we're going out this many years, one of the things Matt and I talk about this every now and then is, I mean, we assign useful life and we try to understand that we're playing the right game in the right ballpark, but in the end, what you really end up finding out is what is the real useful life, and it's because of things like that, we're like, oh yeah, this is scheduled for 2025, but really this should have been 2027. Well, now when you start to aggregate that data and you start running this plan decade after decade, it starts to become really clear, very precisely, what is the useful life of everything. And when you start the plan in 2019, do you know? Nope.
No.
But can I get a pretty good guess on stuff? Yep. But we'll learn those things. But again, when you move them out, the effect on a levy today is
Smaller.
It's quite muted.
But if you do that,
Right, but if it
$1 million
disappears
park
altogether,
system,
it's a much bigger savings, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, part of what we did last year is pushed everything back in that CIP as much as we could to, you know.
But I
But
just,
I tend to agree with you, though, probably. I mean, even you look at Whisper Ridge there, where we just talked about, I mean, that is, depending on your standard of what you think is acceptable or not
just
acceptable.
fine. I played on it.
Right, I mean, if you're playing basketball on a gravel driveway, which many people do, you're gonna be more than thrilled with that court, right? So, but at the same
But on
time,
the same time, if
right.
somebody gets out there and gets hurt,
We'd have the
Just-
same
no,
responsibility either way.
no. If they fall out there because of the uneven ground, they could turn around and sue the city, and I guarantee you they're gonna win. And it's gonna be a lot less money to upgrade that, to
Well,
get it
then
right.
wouldn't we have to fix every sidewalk and make sure there's no ridge? I mean, it's
Yes.
city
We
don't
property.
even
What's the
have
difference
sidewalks.
between
People
park
are walking
property
on
and
the
city
street.
property? Makes no sense.
well, I mean, and I will say.
I know you like sidewalks, I know.
If you,
But
I-
I'm just
so do I,
saying,
yeah.
I'm just saying though.
I don't think
not
that's,
to throw any cities under the bus, but I was at a city in the county recently where the sidewalks in some spots were in real rough shape. I mean,
Cambridge.
and they
I
deal
do,
with it.
I do have some pictures from Matson Park if you want to see what they look like, that we went out the other day. I
The
do have
tennis-
pictures on the laptop of Matson Park courts if you want
Yeah.
to see what they look like.
yeah, I've played on them. They're fine.
Well, I think they just, we resurfaced the basketball court, I guess, but we,
Yeah, so if the council has some direction on, you know, hey, we just don't think that the courts need to be done. That, I mean,
They're
that is good
point
stuff.
blank, they don't.
That is good stuff to know now, because that type of project is something where I'm probably insisting to staff that if it's going to be done, you need to start planning on January 2nd, because you will get away from it quickly.
What are you doing, trying to corrupt this computer?
So, when we visited,
Who put the finger in there?
the other court for
That-
pickleball, because there were about 10 people there, but they weren't using this court because they said it wasn't.
That crack has been sealed. It was sealed when I was there, I thought, a few weeks ago.
This was last week.
Okay.
So, it's a big crack throughout the whole thing. And so
Yeah.
this group of 10 people was not using this court specifically just because of that crack.
Right. I guess I used the other one.
And so, it's pretty degraded, there's a lot of spaces, and just for the amount of use that we get on this, it's just why we're recommending it.
So
But it's not
the major-
deterring anybody from playing. I mean,
Well, it did deter them from using the other side of the court, because
but they
what's
still had the
irritating
other
about
one.
this one is we just did it, what, 3 years ago or something like that, or?
No, it was right after I got here, so it would have been.
Was it? It has
either-
been that long?
either 20, I was gonna guess 2018,
Time flies,
yeah.
Jim, huh?
Well, I wasn't even on the council then. I thought this was something we did like
No,
very
I-
recently.
No,
Maybe-
'cause
Maybe
they-
did we repaint the lines recently? on it?
Well, maybe repainting the lines,
that-
but I remember this one because the contractor painted it flip-flop from the green and the blue, the way we had intended, and so they'd give us money back on that, but.
See, I was thinking we
remember that
re-sealed it and stuff recently, but.
so it has a lot of.
I would, I guess, I will throw this out there. My dad was a structural engineer, and so he drilled certain things into my head, and I would say this, is that regardless of whether you want to resurface them or, tear them up or whatever, he would say the first thing you need to do is keep water from going into the cracks. Otherwise, you're going to risk ruining the whole entire thing in real short order.
See, it's up for a total reconstruction, though. It's not up for a repave. It's up for a total reconstruction.
but
That, to
as-
me, it's not
at
to
a-
that point.
No, but I'm saying this,
Yeah.
at a minimum, no
Right.
matter what, we should be filling the cracks. Because you keep the
I-
water out from under it, that will make it last longer.
I mean, could we just do that with hot patch? Would that Band-Aid or,
Are you talking for the concrete at Matson Park?
no,
'Cause
for
we-
the
we
tennis, for the tennis court? Is that
Yeah.
concrete under that?
That's concrete.
Okay, could we
did-
hop,
We did seal, the last couple of weeks, the basketball court at Matson Park
Mm-hmm.
and the basketball court at Bluebird Park. Those got sealed. I do recall us painting lines at Matson Park, but we added pickleball lines in there.
yep.
That's part of the painting we did over there.
Can we hot patch the cracks with asphalt?
I think you would want to use a different sealant with that. I'm not sure what that would be, but I don't think that the hot patch would be the best option.
Okay,
And
well,
we did use filler, crack filler back in the day before we resurfaced it. And it came in like, almost like a giant ketchup bottle. And Public Works had sealed with that in those cracks. The thing we saw though is, and at that time, the cracks were large, like some of those ones that you see now. And they work for the small ones, but they didn't work for like the crevasse ones. They just weren't designed to hold into that. But for the small cracks, it worked. I think it bought us a few more years, because I think that was in 2015 or so. I'd have to look back to be sure, but fill in those cracks. But those large ones, when they get too big, it doesn't work.
So, Jason would know this, are those just slab on grade, or do they actually have footings? Because why are they cracking so bad? Obviously, it's because of Minnesota, but if you have footings, those just must be slab on grade.
I think it's a floating slab, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
But the footings wouldn't do any good in the middle. The footings only work on the outside edge.
yeah, that's,
And that's, footings are only meant for where there is no, so like your house is on footings. So the inside compass of your house, your slab doesn't fluctuate because the footings keep, and that's all insulated, so the cold can't get underneath your slab.
right.
But if you have footings outside on just a plate-out slab, the slab will still do this, because the ground underneath the slab still freezes, and it does this, and that's why it's cracking.
Okay. I always thought, they call it so they have a perimeter edge, thickened slab, and a floating slab is technically a 12-inch by 12-inch, a 12-inch by 12-inch outside border, but then a slab on grade is flat. But I thought if you did a driveway with the I get what you're saying, but with the I can't even think of the word, it's too confusing, but there's gotta be a better option that lasts longer, because I just don't see how we can keep
Generally, a
affording this.
floating slab like they do on a garage.
Yeah,
When you just say a slab is, when you say a floating slab, the floating slab is going to have a wider and deeper on the edges.
right,
That's a floating slab. Just a piece of concrete poured on like a sidewalk, that's not a floating slab.
Correct.
That's just a slab. That's not a floating slab.
Right.
It's just a slab.
so they've called floating because it moves, it goes evenly with the heaving of the,
Yes, that's why
so
the
if you have rebar in it, it doesn't crack,
Oh,
or
and
it's
it
not
still
supposed to,
cracks.
and not
It
as
still
much.
does.
I'm just wondering how we do this, because those
You,
I
one
mean,
of the only
in-
ways to do it is put foam down, bury the foam down to keep the frost from getting underneath and causing it to flex. That's the only thing you could do with that. And when you go to do that, you're just tripling the cost of it. It just, it's,
Yeah, growing up, my dad would always say there's only two kinds of concrete, new and cracked, so.
oh, right, yeah.
And, you know, so, I mean, you can fight and fight, but in the end, he's like, once it cracks, seal it. Don't let water get in there. That's it, so. All right, so seems like there's a consensus to move the Matson Court work out, like do maintenance, but like the larger.
I don't know.
The one court is nice.
I mean, do you have any specifics at all? But I mean, you're just talking generally on park amenities.
park
you know,
amenities in
let's
general.
Take a look at our options on, can we push some things out? Can we make some things last longer than, or, you know, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that we can totally disregard as far as stuff that needs to be replaced, but Whisper Ridge, did you already take stuff out for that would need to be, like, do we have that in there as far as,
That has not been in the CIP for,
it hasn't?
I was thinking in my mind I might have a placeholder though from prior. Usually if I have something in there and it gets taken out, I usually don't ever actually take it out. Like the Bobcat buyback program, I left that in for years even though we hadn't been doing that.
Yeah.
So like, restrooms at food, that, once it's a line item, I zero it out, but I
Right.
leave the title in there as a, so I've got fencing, but other than that, we left the items there, but just zeroed them out.
Okay.
So if that needs,
Separate fencing you do have there, though, you said, right?
yep, fencing was still in.
We may, depending on what we put there, we may want,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Most of Whisper Ridge is, for me, from my perspective anyway, is waiting for direction is more of the,
Well, I mean, is there anything else as far as maintenance and things?
I don't know of anything specific, and I don't mean to bag on the park board, but they obviously want the nicest parks because that's on their thing.
That's their role is
Right,
to get
correct.
you the nicest parts.
Correct,
yeah,
but
and
I think we have to have a little realistic conversation about what needs to be perfect and what doesn't, because like I said, our taxpayers, the way they act is it might not be in accord with how we're acting and we're spending their money, so we need to be in accord with the majority of our taxpayers. So I don't have any specific examples. I was kind of shocked to hear that Matson was up for total reconstruction and Academy Park, it's got some peeling of the surface on the far outside, but otherwise it's in great shape. So I don't know why that was on there for a recondition too. So there's just that disconnect, I think, in it.
Well, a lot of these items, I'm placing them on there and I'm taking a best guess. And, you know, when I talk to department heads, it's always, if you don't need to do it, you don't need to do it, right? You can push back. This is the beauty of it, right? This is how you give a department head a good incentive. They recognize that so long as there's light at the end of the tunnel, they'll be patient. And if they're not, then we start having the issues that we used to have when I got here, where department heads ask for all kinds of stuff. So they ask for 10 things so they can hopefully get 2. Well, that was kind of a perverse incentive and kind
Which
of
is
an
what happened, the basketball courts were up this year, and the tennis courts were next year. And so we moved the tennis courts ahead because they're in worse condition and sealed the basketball courts to preserve their life longer. So we're redistributing stuff when we
Where do
see
have
it's a
the
need.
basketball courts now then? How far back do we move that?
Oh, I'd have to look.
I just don't think our amenities need to be perfect.
I agree with
That's,
you. Yeah.
that's all so how we do that, I have no idea.
Right now it's at 28. What was our other one?
Bluebird, 28. We did them the same year because it was more affordable.
Yeah, I probably did that on purpose to pay mobilization just once, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to look into that now, I mean, what else do we have for, you know, park replacement or, you know,
Question,
maintenance and stuff over the next, let's say, 3 years or 5 years, something like that? I mean, if we look at some options here, what we could push back or what we could change.
does asphalt do better than concrete in the winter? Because maybe it's a little more flexible. Is there a requirement to have concrete tennis courts?
I don't have an answer for that.
Because our basketball courts aren't cracked nearly as bad as the tennis courts.
Growing up, my dad would always say this, there's a reason some freeway sections are in concrete, and it is because it definitively lasts longer, period.
Concrete does?
Concrete definitively lasts longer, period. But you don't see that on all roadways because it is definitively more expensive.
Right.
So you can have asphalt, it is cheaper. This is why most driveways are gonna be asphalt, not concrete. It's cheaper to put in, it's not gonna last as long.
But the basketball courts have been, how long does anybody know when the Matson Park and the Bluebird Park basketball courts were actually laid down? Because they're still pretty good. And it's been a long time. Might even be the same time as the tennis courts. As long as I remember, I mean, maybe we'd. And then the tennis courts were when? I can't remember what you said.
1906, they've been there forever.
1906.
They've been there as long
Yeah,
as
but they've
I've
been
lived in this
resurfaced
town.
and
They've been here since
Oh,
I've
yeah,
lived
yeah,
here.
but they've been redone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matson we did in 2018. The tennis courts. Yeah.
So
That was right after I got here, and
So
I remember
2018,
that paint
6
job
years,
problem.
and they're in worse shape than the asphalt basketball hoops courts that have been there for 20 years. So maybe we're just using the wrong material.
When you say resurface, are you talking they pulled everything out and put brand new?
Yeah,
concrete down, or-
the difference,
No,
For-
right?
for a resurface and a reconstruct on a tennis court is basically the same as like you would have on a road, right? Like,
Sorry, it was 2018. We have a resolution that we approved the one company
Resurface.
for a resurface, and there were 3 bids received, and the final cost was $17,480 for resurface, not a reconstruct.
It only
So the
lasted 6
concrete was
years.
left in place.
Well, and what is, next year, are we up for reconstruct or resurface? Resurface again?
Reconstruct was like 72,000
But,
or 74.
Mike, was that from my quote? The 74,000?
I would assume it must have been. Or, This is from Katie Everett's original number from 2019. She,
Number you have in here?
yeah, so this detail for there, I'm still working off of her detail. This was what she had put together at my request in 2019. I said, basically, you have to put everything that's in every park on here.
We did get an updated quote for Madsen Park, and it is around 48,000 for that reconstruct for that park.
What's the number you have there?
74.
What'd you say?
74.
74,000 is what's on there.
Oh,
I can.
Madsen Park Tennis Court reconstruction,
gotcha.
$74,031.
It's the line right above the blue line.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that from the screen. This screen.
Screen. I mean, I think we could push it out a couple years. That's basically. at
Well, I
least.
mean, do you wanna push it out, or you wanna just change it to do a resurface again, and instead of, you know what I'm saying?
But the crack develops so fast.
Well,
mean-
6 years, I mean,
It's pretty fast.
many times can you
I'm
just
curious about
The-
asphalt
but-
instead.
So you never quite know the answer ahead of time, but
but if it's only
the
48,
reconstruct
though-
versus a mill and overlay is the same analysis as with the road. It's like, once that subsurface is corrupted, right, you've allowed too much water in there, there will come a point where you can mill and overlay all you want. You're just gonna get even a shorter life out of that mill and
Saying
overlay.
You just wanna
We-
let it ride until it can't be really patched up anymore, and then.
We actually got a quote for Academy Park 2, and also at this time, they already recommended a reconstruct of that court because
No way.
Be-
Fire that person. There is absolutely no way.
I went to.
I am so sorry, but that is probably the nicest tennis court in the damn county. Whoever said that is full of it.
What did you say, Stephanie?
Yeah.
But I think that's because there were points compromised in that we didn't notice on the surface, but it is wearing away so much on the edge that I wonder if there's water getting under that way, and that's why they recommended it. I'm
I
not
think the-
sure why.
I think the coating job on that was poor. That's
But-
why they didn't clean this slab good enough before
So
they
for
coated it.
that
Now it's
one-
peeling.
For Academy, the quote that we got is, sorry, I'm doing the math in my head. It's not. It's 30,000 for that court.
It's a reconstruct.
They're totally full of it.
So 48 plus 30 would be both courts for 78,000.
I hate contracts.
And then we'd also get a discount of 5,500 in this scenario. And we haven't gone out for full quotes yet, so this is just one, but.
They're trying to bend us over on that.
So-
We can't even entertain that offer.
Yeah, and I would say this, the biggest thing, whatever your council wants to move things around to, is fine. Just that the longer you wait, the more likely you are to be compelled to a reconstruct.
But I mean, that's what we
all.
have budgeted now, is a reconstruct, right? So, I mean,
That's,
we
I
already
mean,
are
but that's,
committed to
yeah.
spending it.
But that would be the,
You know,
when you're
just
thinking
how
about
much.
any of those paved or concrete surfaces, the longer you
No,
wait,
just
the more
if
likely
we
you are to
wanted
be stuck.
If we wanted to
for a
resurface versus reconstruct. So, because is that what we have budgeted, is, we just have a resurface budgeted for Academy though, right now, right?
It doesn't even need that.
Academy already?
It doesn't need it.
I mean, there are some spots on Academy.
Well,
that-
with the resurface, we also were considering, through the park board's recommendation, to transition those courts to pickleball courts. So it'd be twofold, adding pickleball courts and resurfacing the court, instead of reconstructing or constructing new pickleball courts, so.
It doesn't need it yet. They have the painted lines out there and they can put up the portable nets when they want and it works fine.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, how much longer do you think we can get by with, I mean, if we were to just patch those cracks and, may not patch them with hot patch, but I mean, patch them with some kind of a sealant and, you know.
Yeah, we can just do that. And, you know, the other thing to remember is like, however we might move these things around, unless we're really moving something really far down the road, it's not gonna change anything particularly grand, and I'm probably still recommending at least 390 on this, for a levy on this fund. Simply because even though my bottom line, like projected cash balance, I'm, right, just, it's either black or red, right? I either have money or I'm down money, right?
Yep.
Basic analysis, right? So I can pay for this. Looks great for 20 years. But once I get out here, well, maybe it's hard to see. Can you, well, the color's better up there than it is down here. I have a about that.
I wouldn't either.
But that's the point, of having this, is to be able to see that stuff coming, so we can make little tweaks along the way. That'd be one reason I wouldn't recommend, hey, let's just drop from 390 down to 340. We make those problems bigger and move them forward in time, would be the thing, right? So I think we still ride with 390 and see how this all plays out, because some of these prices are gonna be too high and some are gonna be too low, and we'll find out through actual experience along the way. But we do need to keep an eye on that those negative numbers are gonna start creeping into the end of the schedule and moving toward us.
I think we should try and extend those lives as long as we can, and then when it comes to Matson Park, I think we should do a joint tennis and pickleball, and then use the park dedication funds for it, because it's a new amenity, so.
Yeah, and if we have, if it's talking about those kinds of tweaks, and we think we have a consensus that 390 is probably the right number regardless of how we move forward, just because of what the horizon would look like, we can make those tweaks along the way. Like it just, that's not even something we would need to do ahead of the September meeting, right? If we're comfortable in the levy amount for this fund, any of the tweaks that we do thereafter are just fine. And it could still be the same as, right, like I would tell Matt on, like, oh, you're scheduled for a trailer, you don't need your trailer, well, don't replace it, then we'll schedule it next year. We'd do the same with these. We'd just keep sliding them back one more year, and until we were like, yep, pull the trigger. But that way we're actually prepared for that kind of thing. Is there anything else that?
I don't know, do you have anything else on that kind of stuff that you?
Not off the top of my head, I can keep looking at stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to pick on you, Stephanie. I just think that people are hurting for taxpayer money and then, or for taxes and their money, and then we're doing things that I don't think fit.
Otherwise, we've got some other items that we've kind of talked about in the past that kind of need to know if you guys want these things penciled in, at least for now, or not at all, or whatever. Right, we talked briefly about a comp study. Do we want to have money in for a comp study, or we just, staff is just calling and asking for numbers, or?
It was 10,000 to do that, right?
10,000, yeah, and the basic.
I want to know, I guess, have we really changed that much in,
I have it off. I don't get it. It's off.
because, I mean, one of the big things about that was the points assigned to each role on the comp study, which I think probably was more important than actually the dollar amount necessarily that was paid on the comp study. It was the points assigned to the roles, so you could try to compare apples to apples.
Yes, that was,
So,
yes.
do we really, if we haven't really changed our position that much on who's doing what, do we really need a comp study to get us new point values if they're gonna be basically the same point values? Because really, when it came to negotiating at the union negotiations, it was more about comparables to North Branch and comparables to Cambridge, and
that
as
is
far
what
as
the
we
update
negotiated
is.
on.
The
But it was useful to have the points to know kind of what you were trying to compare to, but is that really gonna change much if we spend, was it 10,000 on a comp study?
10,000 for this one, but
Well, we did round up because we didn't get official quotes and go out and look at 3 different companies.
Yeah.
But we did ask them just to do an update based off our other one, which means that our job descriptions don't need to be rewritten and our points don't need to be reassigned. So it's not looking at that, it's doing more the comparable of different wages.
I don't know, I mean, if you spend that 10,000, if that really helps you much in the negotiations, you know what I mean? Because they're gonna pull the highest comparables from whatever city they can find, and then that's what you're gonna have to negotiate against, so, and we're gonna pull, the comparables that we can pull, and I don't know.
no, I
I think it's probably good to do it on a somewhat regular basis, but you know what I'm saying?
I think you correctly identified the number one value from the last comp study was
points.
exactly getting those positions evaluated, so you actually knew, like, Public Works here compared to Public Works anywhere else, it's not quite the same. Like, we have a very different structure for how we do that.
Right.
And so it was important to be able to suss that out, and that was the primary value in that one, for sure.
And those really haven't
And we're
changed.
not dramatically different now, right? We have
Yeah.
not split anything off to go to a separate water department, sewer department. We haven't done any of those things, so. I just need to know.
I
If,
would-
and if
I
we're
would lean
comfortable
more
just saying,
towards-
hey, staff, you guys are gonna be asked to do this, cool. But
Yeah, but I mean, we do it anyway, you know what I mean? Which we did, and I don't know if that was only because because
Well,
things
we
had
did it-
changed so drastically in that year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah, it was to update it, because we had numbers done. Had we not had those numbers, I think it would have been more difficult to just go and argue with them that they shouldn't have been higher. But I do think it's to be competitive against all positions, not just union positions, and non-union ones as well. We don't have, I mean, it depends on what department. We don't have massive turnover, but that's a great thing, and we do want to retain the employees that we have. So to be able to show them proof not done by anyone internally and biased, because it's hard to argue against that, then we say you are competitively being paid against,
But I mean, I think some of
the
that
other
comes from
cities.
them just searching for a new job too. I mean, if they say, well, boy, I think I could make more money over at this city over here, and they look, I mean, we're gonna know. I mean, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, you know, I can make an extra 5-10 grand a year over here at this job, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I mean, we're not gonna raise our stuff that drastically to the, you know what I mean? You have to wanna work here at some point, and you have
You
to
let the
find other
market
value.
speak.
Yeah, I mean, you let the market kind of work on those positions, so, I don't know, I mean,
I don't think we need to
No.
spend it on this one, on that one.
I guess I would lean more towards skipping it this time.
Okay.
I think
it sounds like
It's not a bad thing to do, with everyone, and I get what you're saying, but I just,
Well, that one I'll have to go back. Ductwork cleaning at City Hall.
how much is that?
Well, we got one quote, $3,000. And we actually have an example of what is coming out of the vents over there on the wall when we took that stuff off. It's, I don't know, we got 40 pounds out of the ICC. I'm a little worried we might get more
I
than
can't-
that out
and
of
I
here.
can't say prior to 10 years ago, but it's never been done in the 10 years I've been here.
When is the reconstruct on the HVAC system scheduled for?
Well, there's
Or
just,
budgeted for?
it's just furnaces. Like, I don't, anything beyond the furnace or the air.
Oh, okay.
There's never no reconstruct on ductwork. It's
Okay,
just
well, I
cleaning
didn't-
them.
There's nothing,
And I'm gonna tell you right now, you wanna clean your ductwork every 3 years. If you have pets, every year.
Yeah.
Now, like, if Mayor Gordon's house, when they built his house, if they aero sealed his ductwork, he can't clean it for 2 years. If they just mastic and taped it, he can clean it right away. But if it's aero sealed, you gotta wait 2 years. And aero seal is basically running, I just describe it as Elmer's glue. I can be
will
in a house
share-
when they do it, and the smell doesn't bother me, but I can feel my arms get tacky. And, it's kinda what it is, but it's very expensive to aero seal. And then duct cleaning, they go by per opening, and it's different in commercial applications than it is residential.
Did you have an expected number for that?
no, we
Or
just,
any-
once we did the ICC, just because you could kind of tell there was just kind of a bit of an odor, right? And then once we saw the amount of stuff that came out of those vents, it was like, oh my gosh, all right, we can't be in that much better of a boat here. Then we removed that platform, and now you can see where it's been coming up against the wall. It's kind of remarkable.
I can
But-
tell that platform's gone now today because you're sitting like
Yeah.
almost below the.
But that wall,
Yeah.
right,
Hi,
that wall by
Jaden.
that vent
I didn't know
is-
you were there.
So there, and I'm not saying we're gonna spend 3, obviously.
Is that, is
That
this
was
already?
just, that was
this
just
is-
one
is the
random
three-
dude,
is
just
the
to
duct
give us a
cleaning already
ballpark.
in the budget?
What's that?
Is it already in the budget, the duct cleaning? No. And the comp plan wasn't in there yet either, right? Or you did have the comp plan in there?
No.
No, right.
Well, there was a guy that was at the chamber meeting that,
That's
Was-
the one who did the
it
community
is the
center.
one? Okay, damn.
Did a
Well, and-
phenomenal job.
Added more
And he was a nice guy, and he did great work, but
And it was,
we wouldn't just pick him anyway.
right, well, we did get other quotes, and the next one up was thousands more than.
Oh, so we did get more. I thought you said
Oh,
we
yeah.
only got one.
No, for that number of the community center, or for the city hall, but when we did the community center work, which was already done, we did get multiple quotes, and it was, yeah, he was by far the cheapest.
Okay. Gotcha. I mean, to me, that doesn't sound that expensive, so that's why I was
No.
wondering if you were thinking it
Well,
was
we have
less.
faith in him, but I'm
Yeah.
still not gonna just take his,
Oh, right.
but Yay or nay?
Yeah.
I say do it.
Everybody else? Anybody else? Yeah?
So
Okay.
for every $3,000 we spend, we gotta take $100,000 out though.
Well, I don't know if that would quite work.
No deal?
Have you heard me say that before?
Hmm?
Have you heard me say that before?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, why?
That's what I tell all the department heads that come and ask for something.
For every 3
no,
weeks.
I just say no deal.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Keeps people from coming into your office.
What else you
Or I
got?
tell them to bring it from home.
What else you got for,
I was hoping to get clarification on PD open house, right? We were gonna do the National Night Out. What was the final number? I have notes of 12 to 2,500.
dollars or,
1,200 to 2,500, like as the budget for that thing.
yeah, how did you
I
end
was
up with
looking
that?
for clarification on
I
what
think
you
we,
guys,
I think we said not to exceed 2,500 or something. 3,000, okay. I, th-
But I still think it's not bad to run out of food.
yeah, I don't think so either.
I think that was money well spent. That was awesome.
There was a lot of people there for that.
all right, so 2 grand, 2,500, what's the number we want to spend on that?
You think 2 grand?
Oh, you
is
want to do it,
reasonable?
you're saying you want to do it again next year?
That was my understanding from
Do
last
an
meeting, was that
annual?
we were gonna just make this a recurring thing for National Night
I
Out,
think we should.
right?
It was fun.
Insane turnout, yeah.
So what do you think, 2? 25, say? Yeah.
Okay, deal.
Inflation.
Um,
Well, and you got room, and we ran out, but
You're supposed to get donations.
sure.
and I think we're,
Nice, that's good.
I also have on the list, kind of in limbo, is a traffic calming study. I think Jason and Josie were gonna talk to the county on the traffic calming study, if the county, the traffic calming study, if the county was interested in that?
Yes, we did have a meeting with them, and they are potentially interested in basically, discussing some options. Nothing's gone through the county board, but yeah, there is some movement there. We've had a meeting on it.
We were gonna see, Jason thought that was about 5, and we were gonna try to see if they would.
So, yeah, so if we're still serious about that, I can budget 2,500.
But you gotta remember, we're talking the county, it could be 3 years before.
I
they-
know.
Well, that might be, the only thing,
We'll
the
put
only-
some pressure on them.
the only other thing I will say on this is the economist in me is not so sure that that's a super great incentive structure. I do not,
What?
the economist in me is not so sure this is a great incentive structure. I'm a little worried that the county is going to start to look at us and say, if we do bad enough, Isani will totally pick up the tab and split this with us.
Good point.
And I'm not saying that happens right out of the chute, but a person can learn a thing like that after enough years.
Good point. It is their
Because
road, and they won't let
if
us
their
do
public
anything with
works
it.
crew thinks that we're gonna start handling everything out there, I don't think the next time they go out to patch, they're going to do their best. I think they now suddenly realize they have an incentive to do slightly worse to ensure. I'm just throwing that out there. That's a side note, but I had it written down, so.
Good point. I think we
Um,
should just direct all the complaints to the county commissioners then, and just have them pay for it. It is their road.
And that one
They
is.
collect- They
that
collect
is-
money
but,
on it.
I mean,
It's their road, and
Yeah.
ultimately,
but I mean,
at some point,
the intersection of the road is.
yeah, we're correctly splitting on that. That is a well-established deal, like, between cities and counties statewide. Like, that's always kind of how that goes. But yeah, I mean, at some point, the county commissioners just gotta say, give the county administrator a directive and just be like, this will happen by this date, done.
Would that be traffic calming only in that area, or would it be the corridor between Heritage and 23, or the curve?
No, I think you were looking at
Just the
you're
small
looking at a
area?
relatively small section, was my understanding from Jason. This is not like a mile-long stretch of road. You are looking at a specific.
Because I think that whole
A
area needs
specific
it.
point and/or a specific intersection when you're,
Okay.
is my understanding. Okay, so do we still want to just leave that in and find out if the county even,
I think so.
we don't actually have anything from them yet, so. Okay. All right, and then we talked, let's see, we got, right, we got body cameras, we're gonna use, public safety money? Okay. And then we had talked too about shortening the life on those, because I have them listed as 10, but it clearly isn't working out. So, I got notes, you'll see that updated. All right, we already talked about that.
And I don't remember, was there a lease option on those body cams?
Depending on what vendor you're with, but yes, the one, we went with WatchGuard, and I know, but that worked with what we already had, like the in-car, so we only went with the body cameras, and that was kind of a lease hybrid, the fees we paid, because at year 3, they replace them with whatever their new version is, but you own them at year 5. So, yeah.
Does that make more sense, because then we can plan, we know that we're gonna be set on body cams versus, we might, in 2 years, Motorola might decide those ones are shot, and then we're on the hook again.
Right, and so we can look at it going forward, and we did the numbers the first time, and this time we got a little bit of the numbers, but I quit once we got into it, as far as from one of the other big vendors, that everything they do is on a per officer, per annual, per fee, right? That's their plan. But even just when we started getting and looking at their numbers for body cam, squad cam altogether, it was exorbitantly more than what this project was, because we could already use what we had. But it is, for example, nowadays, I called Taser to ask them what a new Taser 10 costs. Well, they told me they didn't really sell them. You gotta pay $2,000 per officer per year, and then they'll give you a new one every 3 years. So, there's.
That's a
those-
lease-only option.
Yes, lease-only options.
As a general rule, I'm skeptical of leases. Implicitly, anyone running their business well should have charged you a premium to not receive money up front, right? So the lease should get more expensive. Should. So I'm always a little bit skeptical that like if I owned a business selling furniture, I can sell my furniture for less if I pay cash for all of it. Right? And I would think the same approach here. Like,
Okay, it just makes us
as a
less-
general rule of thumb.
Yeah,
Yeah,
risk aversion,
you
kind of,
always kind of stuck on the whole planned obsolescence,
yeah.
because it's like, if I want to try to,
Leases are set up to be paid off in the first year, year and a half, 2 years max. So that product is paid off, and then you're paying for the lease, which
Right.
they're profiting at that point.
Right,
uh,
sounds like a mortgage.
no, it's super different. Yeah, I don't know that I have any other, like, changes, updates. Again, working documents, so as new information comes in, I'll tweak things and update the council as to what new information I get, but we're kind of in a lull right now, right? I wouldn't normally expect to be having any, the big highlight will be health insurance, but I'm not expecting that till like first week of October, I think is a rough timeline on that, so. So if there's anything else that council would want to address. Yeah, and then it,
George, we're at 105.5 now.
Went up.
We're going
You shouldn't
backwards.
Shouldn't have left.
Oh, that was when you were here. Traffic calming at 2,500, ductwork for 3,000. So, I think moving some of the park stuff back and pulling some of that stuff out, I think we could look at, but like you said, you still want that levy at that certain amount. One of the things that I feel like it was maybe Alan Duff recently had mentioned something about that there's, and I did just a real brief Google search on this topic, but is there a trend of the fund balance amount where people are starting to say, boy, does that really make sense to hold that much? Because what are we at right now, like 42 or 47?
no, we're above that.
Are we above that?
Yeah, we're, yep, we're gonna,
Why was I
yeah,
thinking were-
you and I specifically looked at that, not,
It was 54?
I asked
3
a
weeks ago or
specific
whatever it
question
was.
of
Yep.
where are we at currently?
yeah,
54 is what it is
54.
right now? Why was I thinking it was gonna be lower than that at the,
it had been,
it had been, okay.
yeah,
Or it's way up.
yeah.
So, there, and I don't know if there's a Government Finance Officers Association or something, is that even a group that's legitimate.
Oh, they have, you know, they have position papers on that and all that stuff.
They're talking
When I
about, they're trying to split off, you know, government, the general fund, you know, kind of the fund balance versus more of a revenue fund. I don't even remember what it was talking about, but there was, anyway, is there some push where they're saying, you know, maybe you really shouldn't hold that much of your residents' money? You know what I mean? And I know you've always said kind of in that, what,
Again, this
40 to
is-
70 range, sort of, is what you've said, or?
I would cap it at 70, and you guys would hear from me by the time we hit 60, because at that point, you have to be pumping the brakes already, otherwise you're gonna shoot clear past 70 before you even know you hit it.
Yeah.
Is there any
Right,
money,
so-
is there any money in this budget plan for there?
No.
None, okay.
None. No contribution to fund balance that's planned. Now, hopefully, as staff, we do a great job. Hopefully,
extra
I
goes
was
in.
forecasting revenues conservatively, and they come in a little high. Hopefully, we do a great job not spending the entire amount that we're all budgeted, and those come in a little lower, and we get the gap, which is generally true, right? I mean, you and I have gone through past year numbers. That generally holds true, but, you know.
Well, and
when-
last year, we skipped that fund balance contribution because we thought we were gonna be selling that property for the 148 to Special Tools,
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yeah,
But-
Which we didn't end up selling,
But
but
it's still an asset, so it's not like.
right.
Yeah, it's not gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not
still
gone
an
forever.
asset.
I,
But did our fund balance, because after 2023, when you actually got everything all calculated and got it all in, I mean, our fund balance must have still continued to go up after the fact then, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, fund balance was in the low 40s.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've made a good, I mean, to be honest, to pick up 15% is actually really tough. It takes a certain set of circumstances to be able to do that.
What'd you say?
To pick up 15% on fund balance
Yeah.
in just a few short years is really tough.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that
Well,
is
and
not,
with your tax rate going
that's,
down.
yeah, while tax rate dropping a whole bunch, that's a really tough thing. My first thought when you say is, oh, there's a push among finance officers or anybody.
Well, I don't know.
It doesn't
I mean,
even matter who it is.
I'm just asking
but-
you more.
my-
I mean, I just heard that from Alan Duff, I think, was who I
Well,
heard it
and
from.
if Alan,
And
I would say this is, one, I think, I think most cities do a terrible job planning.
mm-hmm,
And
Facts.
my first thought when you say that is, I always think of Warren Buffett when, you know, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. Right? It sounds cool, right? When the tide is up, it sounds great. Yeah, let's take our clothes off, right? But when the tide goes out, you got a problem. You have to have, I got everybody's attention though, right? When, oh, that's fine. You know what? If that's what it takes to get everybody to start listening to budget meetings, I'm on board with that. But that's the thing, right? If we start saying, all right, we want to have fund balance go down, 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 someday you are going to need it. And suddenly you are going to be the council that's swimming naked.
so today at the LMC
I
meeting,
do not recommend.
Richfield was basically begging for money because they haven't done any long-term planning on their state highways that go through their area. And we don't ever want to be in a situation where we need money for something that the state mandates us to do, and we don't have it. Because then you have to bond for it, and our fund balance keeps our bond rate better because we have less risk if we have more money in the bank. So I think it's so multifaceted that I think we need to keep.
There was a previous mayor, ways back, that blew a gasket if we got close to 50% on the fund balance, below 50%. And that same mayor dropped us way below 50%.
Wonder who that was.
Remember, fund balance is basically insurance.
Correct.
Right? And the insurance is never for the people that were or the people that are, it's for the residents in the future.
Yep.
Right? And the primary function of that insurance is to maintain a consistent tax rate. Right? Because if suddenly market values tank by 27%.
Which it will next year.
If they tank by 27% and we have 10% fund balance, we don't have cash to do anything except just raise taxes. And at that moment, it's not gonna be a little bit. It's gonna end up being a lot. Even if it is a little bit, each homeowner, because their property values have gone down, it's gonna feel like twice as bad, right? So,
And I'm not saying cut it down 10% or anything like that. I mean, I was just asking the question, is that, are there conversations happening where there's people that would say that maybe it shouldn't be that high, you know what I mean?
I've
Jeff,
also-
was that, did you ask that question because you were thinking the same thing, or what were your thoughts on that?
I think we're gonna skyrocket right past 70% because we're adding more cash to that savings account than most people realize. We were at 42% last year, and then we jumped at 54%.
Was it just last year we were at 42?
So remember, there's two big events that occurred that changed this. One, we had the interfund loan with water and sewer forgiven.
Yep.
Right, that changed fund balance a lot when we did away with that. The other thing that changed a lot was we had a dramatic cut in budgeted expenditures. Remember, so fund balance is always looking at your next year's budgeted expenditures. So if I really want fund balance to go through the roof without contributing anything, all I have to do is lower next year's operating budget and not fund it. And it will automatically look good until I get through that year. Right? So we had a pretty sharp drop the 1 year in total operating expenditures in the general fund. And it was those two events that moved us quickly in that path.
So-
Normally you don't have opportunities like that.
Yeah.
So it's just a percentage of the levy. So this year, say if if our levy's gonna
Well,
go up.
It's operating expenditures, not levy, right? So operating expenditures are gonna, I get to also include against those operating expenditures, LGA, building revenues, all those other things. So you're generally looking at, operating revenue or operating expenses, probably, what are we at, probably like 4.4 million or something like that. So it's not even the levy, it's more than that.
Right. But if we're spending less, it looks like we have more reserve in the bank, basically. It's just a percentage. Next year, it's gonna look worse next year,
Yeah, and you also don't necessarily want to look at, like, any reports I send out, you don't necessarily want to be looking at, like, oh, how much cash is in, a particular bank account. That's not actually going to reveal any information about the general fund, right? Because if I start stacking cash in the sewer fund, yeah, bank account looks cool, it looks great, but you could still have a general fund that's broke.
Yeah.
And that's not good. General fund is, in the end, is the obligatory backstop for everything.
I think we keep on the same direction as you've had with the fund balance. I think it's important. I think housing values are gonna drop. I mean, there was a
get that.
condo that was sold for 190, and then in the last 6 months, 127. The market is drastically dropping, and nobody wants to admit it because then they get less tax revenue. But that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
So that's our cushion, and hopefully, it's not a bad recession, but that's our cushion to keep people from having to pay more taxes in a time where you don't want them to pay more tax. I mean, you want them to, but you.
Yeah, we're also, with these interest rates going up, we're also going to end up on the backside of a particular curve that you guys may or may not have noticed. Market value adjustment on investments, when interest rates are climbing, can be really helpful. It can show a lot of interest income, but the value of that asset just goes like that. It always ends up back where you started. And so there are going to be years here, last year and this year in particular, where it looks like we are crushing it on investment income. And we kind of are.
For a short time.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah,
Look at-
exactly.
look at interest
So we do have to consider that, because there's going to be some inflationary benefit to fund balance based on that activity that will just automatically disappear, and it will not matter what we did or did not do or what we think about it.
Well,
It's just a part of the puzzle, though. It's just another one of those things I think about in my mind, but.
you just gotta watch the November election. And then interest rates will be affected by that. But no, I would not bank on the interest rates staying this high.
Yeah, because I think that right now, if you were gonna, like, if you look at, the next quarterly report, next monthly report, you would look at where we're sitting at with interest income versus what we budgeted, and you'd be like, oh, we are crushing. And we are, sort of. Except solidly half of that is market value adjustment, which will be unadjusted as securities mature.
But that's why it pays to have a fund balance and not have to issue debt,
Oh,
because we'd be on the other side of it where we'd be paying more to borrow money. Now we're making money off of that money. So if we had came into a situation where we needed money, we had to issue debt, it costs us twice as much, because you're not making interest on the money you have, and you're paying interest to borrow the money.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah.
never said that we should cut it, I'm just asking the question.
I've heard around 40%, I thought, usually.
But I
Around
will,
40.
Around 40,
Right,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, is that it is 54 necessary, and you think we're gonna shoot past 7?
I think it's
I
gonna
think
tank this
after,
year.
I think after this 2024 budget and it's audited in, in early 2025, I think we're gonna be at 62%.
I don't think
love
so.
that.
Basically, so right now, we got 2.3 million,
that down,
2.4
Mike?
million.
Oh, I love it, I love it. I've got a council member making bets on this. That's fantastic.
I think it's gonna go
We got
down a couple.
$2.4 million of our residents' money sitting in a savings, sitting in this pool. I mean, is that too much? I mean, I think that's a question that, should that be back in their pockets, or at least some of that back? I mean, let's just even say, just to get the balance, or the tax rate to zero, if you said, okay, if you take out of that fund balance, you take, 105.5, whatever it is now. What is that? I don't. What is that,
So-
what percentage does that get you to? I mean,
So
are you
what-
still at 50%, or you
So what I would say is this, is that the big difference, and I think the reason a lot of people have trouble with that, because I've heard this argument before, right, where, well, government's already got a bunch of my money, they shouldn't have it, it should be in my pocket. The real difference, and I think the reason people have a hard time with this, is that you and I do not exist in perpetuity. You and I have a finite timeline, and I'm only going to earn a certain amount of money, and then that's it, I'm done, right? I die. But City of Isani's operating budget and capital improvement plan will exist in perpetuity. If that money goes back, it will also come back again. If it's going to have to come back, it may as well at least serve as an insurance policy for future generations, for future residents, and provide some consistency. I am also firmly of the mind that while I think business owners really do care about taxes, I think the number one thing they want in taxes is certainty, something that they can plan on. I think that's the first thing that they would like on that. So, yeah, if council wants to go a different route on fund balance, but I hope I'm super clear about what I think we should do on that.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you take the 105.5 out of fund balance, you're still gonna be at 51.6% for your fund balance, you know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
I'm totally opposed to it myself.
George, what do you think?
I'm okay with it.
But, I mean, I think we could look elsewhere first, but I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just, and you
Well-
think it'll, and I mean, typically what we do see is that we leave it at zero, but we do still add from the previous year.
Yeah.
But
Because
our
our department heads are operating
And-
efficiently.
But
and
our
we are-
expenditures go up every year too, because we have more population, so
Yeah, and
Well, I mean, this year, your evaluation is still gonna go up 3.45%, right? So, I mean, even if you leave it at zero, you're still gonna collect more on that levy. It's not gonna be 6.5%, but I mean, it's. Yeah. What did you say, Mike?
tweak that down, the tax rate down to roughly zero. Instead of 6.5, it's, 3 3/4. So roughly in line with that 3.5 increase in market value.
It's just a thought. It's just something, like I said, somebody had mentioned that to me, and I mean, if you're still above 50%, you're still almost 52%. I mean, it's not like you're draining it down to nothing.
Yeah, but
You're
I-
taking
And that $148,000 still hasn't been put in the bank. I know we discussed it last year at the budget meeting, and we thought that'd be a windfall extra for this
Yeah,
current
and-
year's budget, but it
hasn't-
still hasn't been put in the
hasn't-
bank.
It hasn't worked out, and maybe you had stepped out, but I mean, I'm not gonna lose sleep over that because that's still an asset.
No.
Right.
It's not gonna show up as a, it's not gonna show up in a fund balance calculation, but I do recognize that I have an asset that, if things really hit the rails and we're really in a bind, yes, I can sell that for 70 grand instead of 148, just to garner cash, right?
So if we took 100,000 out and replaced it with that 148, we're ahead of the game. Because you're just basically said you're gonna use that as an asset.
Well, unless the planning previously accounted for that. right? You know what I
not.
mean? Like, if we thought we were gonna get to point A because of selling that asset, and then we didn't, then we never got to point A. So now we need to recognize the correct position that we're in, and whether or not that still makes sense to be able to count on that again.
Which, have you changed that in these numbers already?
That, no,
You have, right? Or no?
I don't believe he
Or you're
has.
still,
What do you mean?
well, because you're not saying that we got the 148 in these numbers, because you know we aren't gonna get it right now.
No, I wouldn't have a place, I wouldn't put that.
Right, yeah, we put
It doesn't
zero,
fit as
we
a
had
capital.
zero as a number last year, we just, if
Yeah,
we
it
got
doesn't fit,
148.
yeah, it was an understanding, it doesn't fit as a capital item or an operating
Right.
budget item, that's not quite how that works, that's a balance sheet item that you wouldn't normally put into.
Yeah, so we didn't actually say that 148 is gonna go into fund balance last year, we just said that if it comes
We
in,
just,
then we'll use it.
implicitly, that's what would happen,
Right.
right? Because it's not budgeted to go back out the door when the money arrives, it is implicitly a part of fund balance, because it is not scheduled to leave.
Is there any type of purchase agreement at all on that property right now?
That's a Stephanie question.
Going backwards on it.
That was in the consent agenda, wasn't it?
Oh, the unlimited welding, not at this time, but I do have somebody interested in it. So we don't have a purchase agreement yet, but
Yeah, I'm not super worried about
For the
trying
same price?
we haven't listed it yet, so I don't know what price. It has to go back to EDA first to set a price, and then we'll see what happens. It's negotiable always, so.
Yeah, over the years, we've had enough interest in all those parcels. I'm not super worried about being able to, it's more about getting through the legal work of getting it, ending the prior arrangement formally, and I'm more worried about that timeline than actually being able to sell it. Yeah, otherwise, as we talk about all these items, insurance renewals are still gonna be a big deal, and that might get you guys halfway to what you want, or it might move you 50% in the other direction, I suppose is possible. I don't think we're gonna do that badly, but we'd have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, that's the direct, I'd like to be at zero for, I mean, I know that, 2.6 is not a big deal, and I know we can work our way down from there in the future, but I mean, I've always been one that I want to set that preliminary at what the goal is, and then we find a way to meet that goal, but, I mean, that's what I would like to probably see at this point, would just be a nice, easy way to kind of gradually, I don't know, just get to zero, and then, we can kind of see where the health insurance comes in, we can see where, see if we have some sale of property, I mean, I don't know, and I just would like to be at zero.
I do want to
store
clarify that
funds.
sale of property. We sold that parcel for $1,
Right,
just to be,
well,
so like the
The one-
100,
You're talking about the one today.
yes.
Special
yep.
Tools was the 148, this was.
Yep, both of them though, we sold for $1, and we did a promissory note with the subsidy of the value of the land. So they were just sold for $1, so we're not giving
Right,
back
but
any
Special
dollar.
Tools, they were gonna buy it because they were out of time
Yeah,
on their.
yes, sorry,
agreement.
yep,
Yeah.
you're correct, and so they're not doing that, no.
But you
I
have
s-
another interested buyer, right?
A 5-acre parcel, potentially.
Yep.
You just never know what.
I don't-
It'll all depend on what the EDA decides to sell it at.
I agree. I think we should start at 0%.
Well, so then that kind of actually brings to the next point. Do we want to address preliminary levy at the first meeting in September, or do we want to push it to the second?
I mean, if we're gonna be at zero on the first meeting in September, then I'm fine with it. If you think we need more time, if we don't wanna go that route to get to zero, I mean, and not even saying that that will be the route at the end, but if we know that we can go that route to be at zero, then I'm fine doing it at the first meeting, but.
I'm a little
Push on to the
risk,
Second,
I'm a little risk averse on this. I'm worried insurance is gonna be high.
That's why I said we should leave it
I-
at 2.
I-
Yeah,
More
we can
towards the
always
second.
drop it to 0 or even drop it 3%. I'd just as soon, I'd rather set that preliminary higher bar. I don't disagree with what you're doing, but I disagree with the fact, as I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot and then have a problem when it comes too late.
I agree, and if Mike thinks that's the best route in this case, he knows the budget better than anybody. So, and he's always been pretty,
I've always been pretty
Good.
adamant about it. I'd rather set the bar up here.
Oh, right.
And work to here than set the bar down here and then find out, oh shit, here.
it's
Well, and
100
I
grand,
know
I'm
what you
not
guys
worried
are
about
saying
it.
too, and I'm definitely not saying you guys are trying to waste money or, you know, I mean,
Right.
don't get that impression. 'cause
No.
I mean, I know we're all just trying to,
I just as soon set the bar high and then we don't have, we can always drop from there. We can't go up from that.
well, I know, but I mean, I think that's part of what I like about it, setting the bar where you want it first, is that it forces you
Forces you to
to
do the
reach the
work.
goal, you know?
Okay.
And not saying that, you know, we may find other solutions that get us to where we need to get to without, you know, dipping into that slightly, but
Let's
know.
not decide that tonight. We should maybe wait till the next meeting. Maybe we'll
Well,
have,
so what I just need to know is should I have
Direction.
materials prepared for the first meeting? Give you guys what, well, basically the prepared materials you need to be able to pass a preliminary levy? Or do you guys want to have another presentation or just more time to think about it? And I would prepare those materials at the
I think
second.
if everybody's gonna be here the next meeting, I think we need to set it then and be done with it,
Okay.
and then we can go from there.
I agree.
Otherwise, we can do it this meeting after that, you said?
If worst case.
If we
But
have,
I don't, what happens if we don't have a quorum?
Yeah,
Then
that's,
a special meeting, or it
Yeah.
gets set to what it was last.
Has it ever happened, ever? I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Well-
I mean, I'm not gonna use excuses, but we can try next meeting, but if we can't come to an agreement, then we'll have to.
well,
push
then
it
it
out
just
to the-
goes to the next meeting. But yeah, that's, I mean, you just run that risk. That strange set of circumstances, and cities have had that kind of stuff happen. It's few and far between, but it is a thing that can happen.
Does anybody ever recall there being a city council meeting that there wasn't a quorum, and when was the last time it happened?
Well, the example I
we had
give
one
is,
meeting, we had to wait a few minutes for somebody to get here one time, I think, but other than that, no.
But to wait to get a quorum, that's pretty bad. To get a quorum.
if you can't, yeah.
yeah.
But
So-
yeah,
so
I
I'll
think
prepare
bring
materials-
it back at 0%, and probably at least 3 of us will vote for that, and I think we.
Well, and I'm talking about cutting. I don't wanna dip into savings. I wanna,
Well, yeah, and I think, but I'm just saying, I mean, if for right now, if you just want to get it to a point where you can pass that preliminary, 0 is what we want to reach, I think. Now, how we get there, we can always figure that out all the way from now until December, and we can get but I just think that sets the goal to where we are trying to get to, and it's, if, like I said, if we have to dip in, I mean, we're talking about changing from 54% to 51.6, you know, on fund balance. And but it forces us to get to the goal of 0, and then we can work from there, you know what I mean? So,
All right, so we're looking to presentation materials that have a tax rate flat.
yeah,
yeah, and
Right.
105.5.
Yeah, I will, yeah,
Yeah.
you'll
You'll
see,
figure- Yeah,
yeah, well, you'll see that
Hey.
represented.
We'll have clean duct work in the city hall. So that's a plus.
but I mean, I think if the insurance numbers come back better, then that's great, you know, I mean, if you, you know, at what point do you know for 2024, well, you won't know, I guess, until next year, what you actually contribute to fund balance.
No, I pretty much always have a sense by the, you know, probably by like the 3rd week in January, I've probably done enough audit prep that I've got a pretty good sense of what I suspect it will land, but
Yeah,
it's not a definitive thing
Yeah,
until
not like
right up.
Can we get the
Say,
last,
okay, yeah.
can we get the last 3 years of what went in there after the audit and everything? Those numbers?
We looked at that last year,
I don't remember.
was it?
Yeah, so there's some in the audit material.
Well, and I'd like to see some trend, not just 1 year or
Yeah,
2.
well, we looked at a few years last year, I don't remember what it was. But it was pretty much just about every year that, even though you didn't plan on it, you got something.
This is sort of helpful, but doesn't necessarily quite tell you everything, because this wouldn't tell you if your obligations to other funds and things like that, that is not represented on an operating budget. But this gives you an idea, 2020, right, we netted out 251 ahead, 2021, 200 ahead, 2022, 240. Like, but we've had, well, I don't know, I have enough, maybe I don't have
So average of 200 and just that little short clip.
What was the last, what was the?
Sorry, I was trying to.
61.
Reveal more data.
And then 0.
You can see that from there?
Yeah.
Well, you got glasses, I guess, so.
I got glasses and I can't see
You
any
can't
of
see
it.
that, okay.
I see page 23. That's all I can read on there.
Well, I thought I had
working
good
good.
eyes, and I don't know.
I just see better looking
I
at
gotta
this one, but I
switch,
still
but-
can't read it all.
2018 was down, 2019 was down, 2020 up, 2021. So we've gotten a good rhythm now.
Yeah, and that's where we want to stay.
Yeah.
Preferably,
I just think it's risky. That's,
yeah.
no, there's a
Did you,
lot, but
did you
it's-
budget for those
Two,
years to
two,
get
two,
fund
and then we
balance
jumped up to
at the end,
6
or
last
did you,
year.
well, you did, right?
I thought it was
On
one,
those.
What was that, George?
Or was that?
We
just-
had,
I thought it was 150 that you were trying to get in there every year.
well, last year I was advocating for a 150 contribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Extra.
Yeah, gosh, what year, 20?
I feel like you've advocated
been
for 150
2020?
most years.
I
So maybe- I
advocate,
mean-
I'm always advocating for that, like, I wanna be fiscally conservative,
Right.
I don't ever want somebody living here 20 years from now to be like, oh, that Betker, I tell you, you know, but,
Yeah, that could always
I
happen.
mean, I know nobody knows,
No, no,
most people don't
they're
have
gonna-
any idea
they're
who
gonna
I
blame the
am, but I
mayor and
still,
council.
I don't, I mean, they don't necessarily have any idea who I am, but I still presume that they care about whether or not I do my job well. right?
The
And-
way it's
and-
going, I think by the time you leave, you're gonna have a statue out front of yourself. Best finance director ever.
Don't inflate his ego now.
Actually, I was gonna make a comment about how much you would spend on that, and don't disappoint me. $100
$5.
I was gonna say, there you go. Better be cheap.
I thought you'd advocated almost every year for 150. So maybe, you see that 209,
was-
240, but maybe it's only overshooting the 150 by 90,000, 50,000, 50,000.
Yeah, so, I mean,
But it's something is the point.
Oh,
the
right.
point
Yeah,
that I'm
and-
trying to make,
yeah,
You're
and I-
already at 54 right
But what
now.
if you just got lucky on insurances those years, and this year it's unlucky because
Yeah.
everything's going up
Well,
in
by the
price?
time he passed the final budget, he already knows the insurance numbers.
well, so you gotta remember though, this is like, so right here. Total expenditures, right? So we're sitting at like 4 million, a good chunk of these years, right? If you only contribute 200,000, you're not going to get ahead, right? It's not, eventually you're not going to keep up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are years where that will work and years where this won't work, but you are gonna get to a point where on 4 million, right, 10% is 400,000, right? So I can maybe have 5%. But if I have market values going up and I have increased expenditures going up because I have to provide services for those people, there's a real scenario where that's not necessarily keeping up. It sure can, especially if we can hold the line on expenditures, but we're all gonna have a little bit of a different idea about the appropriate level of risk aversion. How about that? I mean, I think it's clear we're all fiscal conservatives, but there's still
Yeah,
room
and
for
I think
debate on that.
there's some value in being risk averse too, for sure, but.
Okay, so I will bring materials, and with the eye of setting preliminary levy at 0% tax rate change, right? Is that the consensus? Right? Okay.
I suppose.
Well, if you're gonna get outvoted, then
All right.
then you'd be like me. You get on board whether that was your idea or not, right?
I hope nothing bad comes in.
Okay, anything else that we need to address or discuss
What do
or
you cut?
anything
think
else
for
that
right
I
now-
should
What do
be
you cut if you're
researching
100 short,
before
please?
next meeting or?
What do you cut if you're
I
short?
will actually try to
That's,
dig into some stuff with
Well,
you, but.
And that's the other thing I just want to remind the council, I
You have
bring
to
this up
cut
every
something
time,
out.
is I am super happy to spend a whole lot of time with anybody.
Go
Okay?
ahead.
I'm super happy to spend a whole lot of time with anybody. So if anybody comes in the next week or 2 weeks or whatever and is like, this is the thing I need to talk about, this is the thing I need to know about, please do that. Jeff and I spent most of an entire day together, so
Yeah, it flew by too.
it does, doesn't it?
It does.
It's when you're having fun.
yeah.
I was about to order lunch.
Well, sailed right through that. It was already 2 o'clock
Oh,
by the
it's good
time anybody thought of lunch. Yeah.
I think it is fun. It is
We
fun.
both like numbers.
It's the same thing if you tour Public Works or do a PD ride along. It's interesting and you want to keep, the whole day.
I
It's
learn
like,
something
man.
every time you spend time with the city staff.
Yep. Oh,
I learn something
absolutely.
almost every time I do it.
Yep.
Okay, that's how we'll proceed.
All right. Any other business? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, and we can jump back into committee of the whole.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Holmgren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.